Hi there. I am making this video to help my students, the students in my graphic novel class, complete their annotated bibliography assignment. This is the bibliography in progress right now, but in this video I want to focus just on one part of it, which is finding good sources for this. So let's get started. I'm going to show you several different ways you might go about looking for sources and show you some of the problems that some of these have and how you might need to overcome those problems. So let's get started with an easy way to begin a search, which is using the search tool on our library website. So umw.edu/library, and then search, and you can search for different things. One of the books we read this semester is My Favorite Thing is Monsters, and if you remember, the goal for this assignment is to find 5 high-quality scholarly sources, read them, and then write a short description of those to add to our bibliography. So since we just read My Favorite Thing is Monsters, I thought this would be a good one to look at. And indeed, there are several things related to My Favorite Thing is Monsters, but there's an issue if you look at it. There's a problem with the sources. Most of these are not scholarly sources. So we can tell that because I'm familiar with the titles of these, and I'll look at this one in a minute. I wasn't familiar with this one before. This is the book itself, which we could cite that, but that's not a scholarly source. Entertainment Weekly, The Advocate, New Statesman, Publishers Weekly, New York Times. These are journalistic sources, and so they might be helpful to give us some context, but they're not really scholarly, and they're not really going to explain something about the book that we didn't know already from reading it. These might be reviews. They might be just sort of announcements saying, hey, here's a new book that got published. So they're not going to usually not going to be helpful for what we're trying to do here. Let's take a look at this one and see some things about it that help illustrate what I'm talking about. So when you look at this, I guess the Santa Fe Reporter is a magazine. I'm not familiar with it, but actually I think I already had it up in another tab, but that's okay. Go through this way. This is the way it looks in that magazine. So literally just like 2 paragraphs. So it's not much. I mean, it's a new book announcement essentially. And it looks like it does go on to the next. Does it go to the next page? I can't tell. This says it's continued, but I don't know. Anyway, the point is, it's just telling us about this book, and as such is not necessarily going to give us something that we can learn from, right? It's not really analyzing the book. It's just telling us some basic information about it. So it's not a scholarly source, and we can tell that just by the way it's written. So let's take a look at something we can tell is a scholarly source, and I'm going to jump over. Let's do another way you might search for information about this this book. My Favorite Thing is Monsters. Here's a search in Google Scholar, and I like Google Scholar, obviously. It's very useful. The issue is, though, that unless you're on campus, you're not going to be given things you have access to. So many of these things are sources, scholarly sources are going to be behind paywalls where you have to pay for access, and we as a university have paid for access to certain journals, but not others, and Google Scholar doesn't necessarily know. It'll just give you what it thinks is a good answer to your query. So many of these things look good, but we can't actually access them. So that one's in Spanish, but let's take a look at this one. The Oxford Handbook of Comic Book Studies. That sounds pretty good. However, we don't have access to it. So at least I don't here, and I don't think we do from our library either. So that's not, it's kind of a dead end. Like I can't read this, so I can't describe it. I can't write a summary for it. So it might be a good source, but I just can't tell. So I can't use this one either for this assignment. So here's a couple things we can do to get around this question of access and also to make sure that we are finding high quality sources. And that is to go to journals that we know are scholarly journals that we know we have access to. And there's several pretty good possibilities. So one of these is the open access journal Image Text Interdisciplinary Comic Studies. And I'm starting this one. I guess I should confess I helped create this journal, so I know a lot about it, but there's several things we can do to tell that this is a scholarly source. We have an ISSN, we have a name, Interdisciplinary Comic Studies, which sounds scholarly, but even looking at the content, right? So this is a typical article. It's fairly lengthy. It has lots and lots of citations and examples and footnotes, and it's just written in a way and presented in a way that looks scholarly. It has the trappings of scholarly writing, like citations and footnotes. So that's something that tells us right away that that's a possibility. So if you want to kind of make sure that you have something that's a scholarly source, Image text is a great way to find these things, right? So you can go here to search for things and look for something that you're interested in. Off the top of my head, I don't think there's anything about Emil Ferris in here yet. That's a relatively new book. So yeah, there's not. But you can certainly look through the archive, and quite a lot of articles, quite a a couple hundred at this point, I think. So it's something that, yeah, I mean, some of these will be better than others, but you might just want to even just skim through this and see if something looks interesting and then read that, and that's good. It doesn't have to be about one of the books we read this semester for it to be useful. Just, see, it might be about something that you've read before or that you're curious about, and then, there you go. All right, so another source you might find useful is Image and Narrative. This is another open access journal. The challenge with this one is that not all of the content is in English, and they also publish things that are not scholarly necessarily, that are like art pieces. So those are interesting, but probably not scholarship itself. So maybe not. Let's see if there's anything about Emil Ferris in here. Again, yeah, probably not. This is something that if you wanted to write about Emil Ferris's book, you're probably not going to find a ton of scholarship about it yet because it is still relatively new. But you can still learn from scholarly sources and scholarly writing about similar things, and then apply it. Okay, so let me just see if I can find an article here to show you the kind of things that you can find in here. The narrative functions of photography and comics. That certainly sounds like a scholarly topic. So let's take a look. Authenticity in graphic memoirs, 2 Nordic examples. Okay. And let's take a look. And I've not logged into anything here. This is a completely open access journal, as I said. And yeah, so it has an abstract. That's another kind of sign of it being a scholarly source. We see footnotes, we see images, figures. It's about 20 pages long, and we have citations. So again, all of the qualities, the aesthetic trappings of the paratextual cues of a scholarly source. And also this is just, I'm telling you it's a scholarly source. So image and narrative. You do have to look closely at some of these things, but in most cases they're going to be good if you can read it, of course. Another one, comicsgrid.com, open access content. It does use comics as scholarship, so people are writing scholarly comics, which are a little different, but they could definitely work. And yeah, again, a scholarly source, and I recommend it. I think it's good stuff. So let's take a look at some of the content here. And yeah, okay, cool. Okay, nice. Okay, so take a look at this. Let's see. Actually, I'm not going to click on these because I don't know if. Oh, well, actually, I do know this one. This one's about. Well, I know it's about Fun Home. So let's see. Oh yeah. Okay, great. So it's a straightforward scholarly essay. It looks good. At least formal, the way it's formatted. Now, of course, again, you should read it, decide if it's useful, and then write a description of it. But you definitely have access to it, and it's definitely here. And as you saw, there's quite a few works in their archive. So the comicsgrid.com is another place you could find some good stuff. Okay, a few other things you can find, and that may help. Now, I like supporting open access whenever possible, but there are other things as well. And a couple of journals that I found useful just kind of in looking around. If you look for the Journal of Popular Culture, or there's actually several different journals related to popular culture, but generally speaking, comics is under that umbrella. And so you will often find things that are relevant. I tend to find the approaches in it kind of shallow, but not shallow, that's kind of snobby of me to say it that way, but I think they tend to be a bit more generalized and less focused on the work, the literary aspects of a comic. But that's still good, so I shouldn't be dismissive of it. But as you see here, I'm clicking through our library, and earlier when I did this, I had to sign in. So if you did this from our library page, you'd have to sign in with your NetID, and then you'd be able to access it through JSTOR this way. And I do like JSTOR, so that's what I recommend. But once you get into JSTOR, you can select in this journal, and let's take a look at, let's just do graphic novel. See what we get for this. And yeah, it looked like it picked up the word graphic and novel separately, so we probably need to refine our search. But here's something about Brian K. Vaughan's Why the Last Man, so definitely a comic work, and so that makes sense. Let's just try comics and see if that gives us anything. Yeah, so these definitely, yeah, the Green Arrow, something about Scott McCloud, Joe Sacco. Yeah, so these are definitely sources that are clearly related to comics and also scholarly. So these are things that all would be good that we do have access to through UMW. So any of these would also be good. Again, remember your next thing is to read these sources. To find an article, read it, and then describe it. So you do need to do that too. But all this stuff, this is. I wanted to show you how to find these sources, and hopefully that's helpful. I feel like I kind of rambled a bit there, but hopefully those are some good sources for you. So remember to check. Remember to make sure that what you're citing and adding to our bibliography really is a scholarly source. If it's not going to be as valuable. So make sure you can tell the difference, and if you have a question, it's okay to ask, but use your common sense, use these things that I've suggested here in this video to help you find those good sources. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.